Christmas, everybody, and welcome back to this year's end of year 2022 Transformers Studio Series ranking video. This year has been so difficult to compile all of the figures as they've all for the most part been pretty fantastic. I think this has probably been one of our strongest years for Studio Series yet, even beating 2020 when we concluded Devastator, and I never thought anything would be able to top that. But I mean, we got an amazing first wave that consisting of the vast majority of the Bumblebee movie cast, and then towards the end of the year we got some terrific figures such as Galvatron, The Fallen, and Hot Rod. But we have to talk about one of the newest entries into the Studio Series and something that was introduced in 2022, and that's the Core Class. Yes, Core Class did make its debut this year, and I think it's a fantastic addition. It allows us to get some of those slightly smaller characters into the collection, which perhaps would never have seen the light of day, or if they had, they would have been a static minifigure, like we saw with Igor and the Transformers Dark of the Moon Megatron. Now, for this specific ranking video, I've decided not to include them in the main ranking just because they're all quite small and they're around about $10. They don't really stack up, and they're not going to really and truly hold a chance when in comparison to some of the Deluxe Voyagers and Leaders. So I'll just give them all a big, massive honorable mentions, and to be honest, all of them were pretty fantastic. If I were to choose a favorite amongst the bunch, I think it would have to be Rumble. Rumble is a really cool figure, but then as saying that, Shockwave 2 has also stacked up very well almost 12 months on since I reviewed him. But with all that being said, let's jump into the video and kickstart things off with the worst Studio Series figure for 2022, and for me at least, it has got to be Coronation Starscream. This guy is just so bad, and as the year has progressed and we've seen some of those War for Cybertron characters get complete brand new molds in the Studio Series, I have no idea what Hasbro were thinking when they put this out. I mean, the mold to begin with wasn't fantastic. It was based on a Classics Deluxe Starscream that was released years ago, so really and truly they should have given us a complete brand new mold. The only saving grace for me would be the throne. I mean, even the Coronation getup isn't that great, and to be fair, it's based on a couple of seconds in the 1986 movie. If you did pick this up, I really hope that it was at a really good discount. As for the Leader class price point, sadly I just don't think this one here was worth it. Next up we have Dark of the Moon Bumblebee. Now, I know there'll be some of you who are quite surprised to see him ranked so lowly, and to be honest, it's a fantastic figure, but it's a figure that we've seen released so many times, especially this mold and the type of engineering, and there really wasn't that much new here for this guy. He looked his best, in my opinion, transformed up into the 2011 Camaro, and it was pretty decent. My biggest gripe with him would have to be the head sculpt. They still haven't been able to give us that first Trilogy B without the mask design looking cool. It does just look a little strange, and this guy was massively lacking in the paint department, which appears to be plaguing pretty much all of the most recent Bumblebee figures, which is pretty unfortunate. But yeah, it's a decent figure, but definitely not one that amazed me out of the entire bunch. Next up we have Thundercracker. Now, this was a Bumblebee movie seeker, and the only reason he's ranked so lowly is because, to be fair, there's not really much new here. He's basically an amalgamation of Blitzwing and Starscream, as you would expect, and whilst it's a fantastic figure, don't get me wrong, I think these Seekers are probably some of the best Seeker molds we've ever seen. Much like Bumblebee, he just didn't amaze me like some of the other figures on the list. And talking of an upgrade, the next figure we have is Studio Series 86 RC. Now, this in my opinion was a great update. It was a complete, for the most part, brand new mold. It shared vague similarities to the Thrilling 30s version, but was completely devoid of any of the Earthrise pieces, which I thought was fantastic. This is how you do an upgrade. I really wish that's what they've done with Coronation Starscream. This RC, in my opinion, is probably one of the best versions of the character we've seen. They tried to strike a balance between giving her a super accurate alt mode, yet still retaining the awesomeness that the bot mode had from the Thrilling 30s design, and for the most part I thought they were pretty successful. Articulation is a massive improvement when in comparison to Thrilling 30s, but I think the issue that the vast majority of collectors have with this is that the kibble just hangs a little too lowly on her back. It basically covers up the entirety of her butt, and I do think in that regard Thrilling 30 did it a little better, but again, they tried to make that vehicle mode just a tad more accurate. Then we're going to talk about a fairly recent figure, and one that again I think you guys are going to be quite surprised to see ranked so lowly, and it's Studio Series Age of Extinction / The Last Knight Crosshairs. Now, this figure I think is really great. I do think it's a good update on the character. Is it a massive upgrade? Maybe not. I mean, there are still some things which I love about the 2014 and even the 2017 The Last Knight versions. This one, detail-wise, I think is superior, but just in terms of playability, not too certain. I mean, the trench coat does like to get in the way. He was kind of a shell former, even more so than the original version, and he had some very loose joints, which is unfortunate, and not to mention that the spoiler just continuously wants to pop off here, there, and everywhere. So if you do have this figure, I'd definitely recommend tabbing just a bit of glue on that spoiler just to permanently fix it. But details is definitely where I think this figure shined, and its alt mode. In terms of articulation and playability, overall it just came across to be a little frustrating. Next up we have Junk Heap or Junkyard. Now, this was a really cool figure and one that definitely took me by surprise. It was basically an extensive retool of the Junkion Wreck-Gar that we saw in 2021, and I was quite surprised to see just how heavy they went in the retool aspect. I mean, this guy for the most part had brand new pieces pretty much everywhere, which was really sick. I thought he was a fantastic Voyager to start off with in 2021, and this version of the character may actually be my favourite out of the two molds. So yeah, really cool figure. The only reason why, again, he's ranked slightly lower on the list is because he is basically just a partial of a pre-existing figure. Now we're going to talk about one that I think is incredibly underrated, that being the deluxe class Perceptor. Now this is a fantastic figure, completely brand new, amazing articulation, pretty decent size for an average deluxe class, which I thought was sick. The only thing that kind of lets it down in my opinion would be the hollowness that we have in the inside of the arms. The thigh joints becoming very easily detached when you're just messing around with him. Sadly, they don't actually lock into place, and if you turn him to the back, he has this massive hollow void, which I think could have easily been covered up with an additional panel. But I guess it's the deluxe class and a pretty substantial one at that, so some corners had to be cut. But overall, definitely one of the best versions of the character I think we've ever seen. Now, next up is one that I was really looking forward to, and I think it's safe to say it delivered, and it is a Revenge of the Fallen Sideways. Now, in terms of the design, upon reflection, they did kind of simplify it when in comparison to what we actually saw in the movie, but I mean, the movie design is very complex, so had they tried to replicate that in a deluxe figure, I just think overall it would have been super fragile. The figure we got is definitely a massive improvement when in comparison to the 2009 release, especially as far as the head goes and just the overall proportions. The legs look sick. I really liked how they kind of took inspiration from the game universe in regards to the style of his cannon. I mean, could that be a hint that we could potentially be actually seeing proper game characters going forward in 2023? I guess we'll have to wait and see, but overall cool figure. It's a shame that they couldn't actually get the license to Audi, but the vehicle mode comes close enough in my opinion. Now we're going to talk about a joint spot. Now the reason why these are joint is because they're basically retools of each other and they both have the same pros and cons. So it is the Bumblebee movie, Ratchet and Ironhide. Now I actually really like these two. I think they're both fantastic. If I were to choose a favourite out of them, it would probably be Ironhide, just as I love the head sculpt and the colour scheme. Really good deluxe figures. My only issue with these would maybe be the articulation in the wrists being a little lacking, and I do wish maybe they could have filled out a few hollow spaces, but definitely very cool figures. Like these ones quite a bit. And here we reach the halfway point, and it is Age of Extinction Galvatron. Probably one of my most anticipated figures for this year, and it was anticipated because I was just so eager to see how Hasbro would approach this design. If you cast your mind back to the original 2014 toy line, which to be fair wasn't the best overall, Galvatron was a figure which I thought was heavily compromised, not only due to them giving us more simplistic transformations, but due to his design. When he would transform, or should I say break apart into billions of different particles and then reform, his robot mode would be completely devoid of any vehicle mode pieces, which in terms of an action figure is just near enough impossible, and for the most part I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, this is definitely an improvement when in comparison to the first version. I think the main difference between this and his original 2014 counterpart was this actually had a transformation and wasn't a straight up shell former, and overall I think it was pretty successful. I mean, the details are fantastic. It was so awesome to see detailing on the back. They actually tried to recreate that hole, which I thought was really cool, and the details in the head are just absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, he came across to be a little too spindly. Had they tried to strike a balance between the big broad proportions of the original version and then the complex conversion of this one, I think we could have probably been left with the perfect Galvatron. But as it stands, this is still a very cool figure. I think the vehicle mode was compromised, but like I say in all of my reviews, I would much rather the alt mode sacrifice when in comparison to the robot mode, and overall it's definitely a really cool figure, but one that I think we could potentially see another update for 5 or 10 years in the future. And then next up is our only Dinobot to be released this year, that being a Dinobot Sludge. Now this guy is fantastic. I really think he's an amazing leader. I think in terms of the proportions, it's a big chunky leader class as you would expect. Definitely one of the biggest ones we've had released in the past couple of years. Very well made, not many hollow spaces, but sadly he was kind of plagued with quite poor QC. I mean, the joints weren't the best. Those panels that kind of hang out on the back were super loose and floppy, and my copy initially wasn't too loose in the hips, but as the months progressed, my goodness, he actually struggled to stand up. So really glad that DNA Designs did come out with a few additional filler pieces, but definitely a really cool figure. I think the Dino mode as well looks absolutely fantastic. The only issue I had would be the feet just kind of sticking out from the underside, but I'm sure there's various different upgrade pieces that you can pick up, and he just makes me super excited for the final two. I know Snarl is rumored to be coming out in 2023, so definitely looking forward to that guy. And now we jump into a whole host of figures, which to be honest were some of the most difficult to rank as they're all stellar, and we have to start off with some of those Bumblebee movie Cybertronian characters. So first of all, we have Wheeljack. I mean, this is just such an awesome figure. Really well done. To be honest, I don't actually have many qualms with it at all. I think the details in the bot mode are spot on. This actually looks like G1 Wheeljack. Bojack Rise of the Beasts, so I mean, why they couldn't have just kept this design, I'm not too sure, but really awesome head sculpt, loved the articulation. It would have been cool had they given him, you know, some wrist joints, and I also would have liked the shoulders to actually have clipped in, but very nice figure, really well articulated, awesome vehicle mode. I think that can be said for pretty much all of them besides Soundwave. Their alt modes were fantastic and they were conceptualized designs. So it's nice to see Hasbro kind of taking creative license with some of these live action movie designs. And that brings me on to another figure which I thought was just slightly better, that being Deluxe Class Brawn. Now this is just a fun figure to mess around with. With Wheeljack, to me, I found there to be a little too much going on, especially in the leg department when you were transforming him. He has this kind of fiddly aspect, but nothing like that here with Brawn. This is a solid, stocky figure, a little small, but that's what you would expect from the character. I think the articulation's on point, the detail and the paint are just so awesome, and he comes with 2 accessories, which I thought was pretty sweet. And again, decent vehicle mode, maybe could have been a little better. From certain angles, it kind of looks like a toilet in my opinion, but considering he never actually transformed in the movie, the vehicle mode to me is not really a massive deal breaker. And then next up, we have my favorite, or one of my favorites from the Bumblebee movie cast, and it is Soundwave. This guy is just absolutely sick in terms of his robot mode. Articulation was really well done, plastic quality on point. He had a few neat gimmicks, such as the opening chest that you could actually store the core class Ravage in, which I thought was awesome. The only thing which let this guy down would be the alt mode, but much like the previous 2, these guys never transformed in the movie, so I can't really detract points for a vehicle mode which we never actually saw on screen, and at least they gave him some kind of vehicle mode. And then a figure which I think is the best out of the Bumblebee movie bunch would have to be RC. I think this is hands down not only the best figure out of the Bumblebee movie line, but one of the best RCs we've ever seen. It is so nicely done. Finally, an RC figure which isn't compromised due to a massive backpack, and I just think Hasbro knocked it out of the park in terms of her design. She looks fantastic, super accurate to how she appeared in the Cybertron Fall sequence. I thought the articulation for the most part was on point. She came with some pretty cool blasters, loved the detail. My only minor qualm would be that they didn't paint the pupils, meaning that she does look a little lifeless, but that's nothing you couldn't fix with a tiny little Sharpie. So really nicely done figure, and she actually had a pretty solid Cybertronian, almost bike mode, so near enough a year since she was released, and still one of my favorite Studio Series figures to date, I think. And now we come to the final 3. Now this was actually quite difficult, you know, to compile, but I think I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. So in 3rd place is Studio Series 86 Ironhide. I just love this. Since I've got him, I haven't been able to put him down. I think he's such a solid entry. I know there was some criticism when he was first shown off that he was quite small, but I think he definitely more than makes up for it engineering and just plastic quality wise. This guy feels dense, like some of those old Voyagers, and it's so sick to have a mainline Ironhide, which doesn't require parts forming to transform. In my opinion, this absolutely annihilates the Earthrise version that we saw in that Autobot 2-pack, and to be honest, scalpers can literally have the middle finger, as there is no reason to pick that 2-pack up now. We have this figure, unless you want Prowl, but I'm pretty certain they'll eventually give us an 86 version of that character. Really awesome figure, really nice vehicle mode as well, and transformation, so cool. I don't think I've actually transformed a mainline Voyager as many times as I have this guy in the past couple of years, so just overall, such a sick looking Voyager. I think if you are to pick up one Voyager from any of the Transformers lines this year, it would have to be Ironhide. He is so cool. And now we come to 2nd spot, and trust me guys, I was in 2 minds as to whether or not this character should go here, but in the runner-up spot for the best figure of 2022 in regards to Studio Series is the Leader Class Revenge of the Fallen, The Fallen. Now I'm certain you guys will probably thought he was going to be number 1, and trust me, he came incredibly close to be, but the reason why he took number 2 is because the Fallen never actually had an alt mode in the movie, so therefore the designers were allowed a little more leeway as far as how accurate they could get that robot mode, whereas the top pick has a stellar robot and vehicle mode. But we'll get into that in just a second. The Fallen, my goodness me, this was a character that when was announced, I literally had an aneurysm. This was a figure that I've wanted for so many years. The Hunt for the Decepticons version, for the most part, you know, well over a decade, still held up incredibly well, so I was excited to see how this one would top it, and it absolutely did. The color scheme on point, the plastic on point, the detail, the paint on point, articulation was just mind-blowing. They actually gave us the "give me your face" gimmick, which revealed an amazing endoskeleton of the Fallen. It was just so cool. He came with the staff, amazing articulation, pretty weird abstract looking alien jet mode, but to be fair, that's what the original toy was, so can't complain all that much. Really amazing figure, got to be one of my favorite Studio Series figures of all time. It's just an absolute knockout. And now we come to the 1st spot spot the winner of the best Studio Series figure in my opinion for 2022, and it is Stop the Time Studio Series The Last Knight Hot Rod. Now the reason why this guy took top spot for me is because not only does he look incredible robot mode wise, but he actually transforms into a pretty sick looking Lamborghini, and this is only a deluxe class. He literally, in my opinion, is the definition of a mini masterpiece. I think as far as the deluxe standard is concerned going forward, this one's definitely set the bar for around $22 to $23. This one is stellar, really great articulation, pretty decent paint. I mean, yes, it could be better, but you could say that for pretty much any mainline figure nowadays. I think the accessories were cool, the details are just on point, transformation complex as you would expect from a live action movie figure, and like I said, that Lamborghini is just absolutely incredible. So without a shadow of a doubt, when I got this guy, I knew he was going to be my top pick for 2022, as I'm just blown away with how accurate he was. And to be fair, neither mode sacrifices. The Lambo looks cool, the robot mode doesn't have any excess pieces hanging off of it, so really cool figure, love him, and I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. So there was my 2022 end of year Transformers Studio Series ranking video. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how I ranked each and every one of these. I mean, like I said, those final three were so difficult to determine as to which one should be runner-up, which one should be top pick, but I'm pretty happy with so far how it's turned out. And I mean, this year, just in general, I think has set the bar for Studio Series. I'll be incredibly eager to see how next year is going to top it, and I think it has the potential to do so, especially with rumours that we're going to finally be seeing some High Moon Studio Series War for Cybertron game characters introduced. We've got Transformers Rise of the Beasts, and if Battletrap and Bumblebee are anything to go by, that line in itself is going to be terrific. So very much so looking forward to next year. But 2022, wow, what amazing figures we've got. The Fallen and Galvatron, two of my kind of bucket list Studio Series figures, I'd say. And to be honest, there aren't really many more in regards to Michael Bay characters that I desperately want. It would be quite cool to get maybe an Invasion Mode Prime, and of course a DevCon. Will that character ever surface? I guess only time will tell. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to thank you all so much for your support throughout this year in regards especially to my Studio Series reviews. You guys seem to really enjoy them, and I love making them as they're primarily based on the live action movies, which are definitely my bread and butter. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the holiday season, and until 2023, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.